And also, I learned from this experience of the emotional trauma how to work with a 9-year-old girl who healed physically from surgery, but not emotionally. And so she was a little girl who was really on the brink of dying from dehydration and starvation. And I presented this case at the Milton H. Erickson Brief Therapy Conference in Orlando, Florida in 2010.
Yeah, you mentioned that. And now, what was that girl's situation?
Well, she was 8 years old, and she played a game of soccer and scored 2 goals.
Which is good.
Which is good. And her father was the coach of the team.
Okay.
And then that morning before the game, she had a stomach ache, and she thought it was just an upset stomach. But after the end of the game, she was really in a lot of pain.
Right.
So they brought her to the emergency room, and she had an emergency appendectomy.
Oh, wow.
And she recovered physically from it, but not emotionally. And so what happened was the surgeon and the pediatrician said she should have healed.
Right.
We don't know what's wrong. But then when she didn't eat or drink, the doctors said, well, you have to go to an anorexia facility for teens. That was 3 hours away.
Right.
Now this little girl wouldn't be able to attend school at this facility because she was only 9 years old. They didn't have education on her grade level, so she was devastated and alone.
So now what was her situation at home?
Well, the idea was that her mom first called me, right?
Okay.
And she was desperate on the phone, saying, could you help my daughter? You know, I don't know what to do. And she was crying. And she told me the story of what had happened with her daughter. And she had to feed her with a nasogastric tube. So when she came to my office the very first time, the little girl was so scared, she was clinging to her mother.
Right.
And she had sunken eyes, and she had also this circles around her eyes, and she was very frail. And the NG tube had fallen out the day before, and she didn't want it put back in. The little girl didn't want it put back in. So she had, as a result of this, she had cardiac arrhythmia and also electrolyte imbalance because she wasn't eating and drinking. And then, so her mom said, can you work with her to have hypnotherapy? I don't know what to do.
Right.
The doctor gave her appetite stimulants, you know, and that was it. So I didn't know how I would work with her because it was a situation that was not very common, but I prayed and I knew I would get inspiration.
Right.
So then I said yes, and we began working immediately.
Okay. So when you start working together and you met her for the first time, what did you see?
Well, I saw this little girl who wouldn't eat and drink. She blamed herself for this appendectomy because she thought it was something that she ate, and that's why she wouldn't eat. So then when the NG tube fell out, she was able to drink this liquid supplement called Ensure, but it took so long for her to drink it. So for 8 ounces, it took her 8 hours, and she would drink it in isolation away from her family. So this wasn't enough nutrition for her to go to school. And she was starting now to communicate with other teens who had anorexia, and she was starting to align with them. And I knew that we had to change direction because she would become one of them. And so that's where the story began. So what do you do?
Yeah, well, what are your goals when you're working with this girl and someone like this who's got this kind of issue?
That's right.
The goals that you kind of work toward.
It was a serious condition, Rick, because with the electrolyte imbalance and the cardiac arrhythmia, her life was threatened. So her goal was to attend school, the 4th grade. There was a new school opening up in town, and she really wanted to be with her friends, and she wanted to return to the soccer field. So because the NG tube fell out, she didn't want to put back in, and we joked. We said, well, if you have your class picture, it would be better, you know, not to have this tube hanging out of your nose, right? So it happened to be in the summer, and the Summer Olympics were going on.
Right.
So I helped her to develop this goal chart where she could make her drink faster and drink more supplement, and also to play in the backyard Olympic games with her sisters and brother.
Right.
And they won gold medals and silver medals and bronze medals playing these Olympic games. And so gradually she was able to eat more, drink more, so that the doctor said she could go to school.
Right.
And so that was really a challenge for her because at first, when she first came to me, she was totally nonverbal.
Right.
And I had to figure out a way to communicate with her, right? So I know I had to reach the subconscious mind where all healing takes place. But she didn't say a word. Right?
It's tough to get there if she's not
Yes.
going to talk.
So I'm thinking, okay, so what do I do?
Right.
So I came up with this idea.
Okay.
Now I know
Oh,
what
here
you're
we
going to
go.
tell me, right? Because the last time we had a picture of a bird's nest, and remember the little blue robin eggs.
Yes.
So now the eggs have returned. They've hatched,
They've
right?
hatched,
They've
haven't they?
hatched
Look at
here.
this. Look at this. Now,
Right.
now we've got hatchlings. We've got hatchlings.
And
right
so
here.
I use this little hand puppet to
That's a
communicate.
hand puppet. They
That's
look
right.
real, Dr. Christine.
That's right.
I don't think that's a hand puppet.
It's a little
Don't mess
hand
with my
puppet.
head like that.
So the little birdies, they're so happy to be on TV the second time
Well,
around.
yeah.
The first time in the little portrait, and now they're happy to meet you.
Well,
so I'd like
nice
to
meet
introduce you.
What are their names? Do
Well,
they have names?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
Okay, over here,
They have names.
she's waving at you.
Yes.
Her name is Felicia.
Hi, Felicia. Ooh,
Felicia
that's a
first-
sexy name.
Felicia First Brainer, right?
First
and she's
Bra-
yes,
First
First Brainer.
Okay.
And she's associated with the conscious mind or the ego, if you're looking at it in Freudian terms.
Okay.
Right? And then over here, she's waving.
The
This
one
is Samantha.
On your right, my left.
That's right.
Yep.
Samantha, she's waving. She's Samantha's second brainer. And
Okay.
she's connected with the subconscious mind or the id.
All right.
And
Now,
in
what
the
about
middle-
What about the middle?
In the middle is Nellie No Brainer, right?
Ah.
And she's the referee. So I used this little hand puppet and I played birds chirping in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And we had kind of a conversation between the three birds. So Felicia might say, remember this is the conscious mind speaking,
Okay.
and she might say, don't eat that food. That food will make you sick again. It's bad for you. And then Samantha, connected to the second brain that's in the abdomen, she said, but please, I'm so hungry. Feed me, I'm hungry and I'm thirsty. And Felicia said, no, you'll vomit again. And then Nellie No Brainer, the referee, she chirps in, this is ridiculous. This is a no-brainer to eat food. You have to eat this delicious food to be healthy and happy, right? So we had this whole conversation, and I recorded it so that she could listen to it daily.
And did she respond? Like, did she talk back to the birds, or was it just all you, Dr.
It was,
Christine?
at first, it was all me, because remember, she was nonverbal,
Right.
right? And then, so gradually, with these things, she was able to have more supplement and to drink it faster. And she was able to go to school. And she was so excited to be in the cafeteria with her friends. And the first time she ate a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, she reported it, and she was so proud of herself, right?
Well, that's awesome. And that's great, especially for a kid that young.
That's
you know,
right.
that's a tough time to go into school and have issues and not be able to, eat lunch. One of the things that everybody does, eat lunch with your friends.
Yes, well, she wasn't able to eat anything at all. Remember, she wasn't eating or drinking.
Right.
So
to be able to get to that point
to get to that point
is
and
monumental
to
for
get
her.
through the class, etc.
Yeah.
And so it was monumental.
And of course, this is an example of, I guess, imagery, right?
Yes.
Using imagery. Now,
That's right.
What else do you use for imagery to help your patients?
Well, I have some things here. I'm going to show you.
Oh, what do we got? We got
What
more,
I used
we got
for-
more stuff in the bag.
Yes, for this little girl. I used this story here. It's called Stone Soup.
Okay.
And
What
it's
is that
about
about?
it's about these soldiers who came back from war, and they went to a small town, and they wanted something to eat and lodging, but nobody would help them out.
Right.
So they came up with this idea that they would take some stones and they would tell the people in the town that they were going to make soup, stone soup.
Right.
And they went back around to the people in the community, and everybody started to contribute to the soup pot. And then at the end, they had a big celebration. Everybody was so happy, and they got some great lodging out of it.
Okay.
So what I did with this young girl, here's another picture
Okay.
we have here, the stone soup book. So we would play gourmet chefs, right? So I had a big soup pot, and I had a pumpkin candle underneath the table to heat it up.
Mm-hmm.
And we're using our imaginations. This squash and carrots and onions, and celery, and we put some water, and of course we have the stones here. And this stone is heart-shaped.
Okay.
And so we added all these things, and we played in our minds, and we also looked up recipes that she could bring home with her to her siblings, and they made meals, and she began to eat more and more.
Just from playing with stone soup.
Stone soup, that's exactly. And talking about food and starting to talk about, well, which foods will you eat this week,
Right.
you know, to add to your recipe.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it was a way to kind of break down that barrier.
That's right, and to start her on the road to recovery.
Now, what about? What do I see here? Is there a little bird red or something?
Yes,
What do you
well,
got?
we have
She's got more wonderful toys.
we have other things, yes. So so we also work with soccer imagery. Right,
Okay.
she was a soccer player, and
Right.
she loved Mia Hamm, who was very famous at that
Right.
time. And we watched a little video of Mia Hamm with her children in the kitchen eating, and how important nutrition was. And I also used soccer imagery so that she could imagine that all the trauma, all the pain, all the anger was in the soccer ball. So
Okay.
in her mind, we would go to the soccer field and kick that soccer ball right into the net and score and score and score to release all the trauma. And another thing that I used was this story here called The Little Red Bird. And
Okay,
so that's why we have this
Oh,
little red.
is that why this is here?
That's right.
Okay.
Mhm.
So the book wasn't enough. You brought an actual cage with the red bird sticking.
Yes. Yes, because I'm going to tell you the story.
Okay.
So this is about a little
Story
red bird who was in the cage, and she had everything to eat and drink and to read. Very content.
Right.
But one day, the cage door was open, and it was facing an open window of the room.
Ah.
And she had the opportunity, if she wanted, to fly outside for the very first time. So then she said, oh, look at that. I think those things are called trees, you know, and then people. And then after she flew out, she was playing with the children in the park and had a wonderful adventure. But at the end of the day, it was getting dark, and she asked this question, should I stay or should I go
Right.
back to home? What would you do?
Well, especially if it's getting dark and I'm hungry, I'm going home. I got to eat.
Okay, so she took another route eventually, right? So after about 6 months' time of working together, she was able to go to a nutritionist who gave her a healthy diet to eat.
Right.
And that was impossible before that because she wasn't eating anything.
Right.
So with that, she was able to get through that school year. She won a spelling bee. She was class leader. She got all A's on her report card. And she was ecstatic that she was able to go to the 4th grade and go back to be on the soccer team.
Right.
And along with that, we never found out the exact cause, but it was related to trauma. And this trauma was so deep, as I said, the 4 levels of healing. When you
Right.
talk about emotion, and that sinks really deep down,
Right.
like it had with me with the cesarean sections.
Right. So now, how is she doing now?
Well, I kept in touch with her over the years. I would send her little gifts from around the world, pretending I was a little red bird. And then when she graduated from high school last year, I sent her a card and also a little note. And she was so happy to hear from me because we talked about the experience she had. She remembered all the imagery. She was so glad that I worked with her when no one else could or would.
Right.
And she knew from the very first meeting that she would be healed. And she was a happy, healthy young woman going off to college. This was 9 years after we had worked together. She's
Right.
now 18. And she was studying psychology and nutrition so she could help children in her situation.
Oh, wow.
So it's a beautiful story. So she healed on all 4 levels, body, mind, spirit, and emotionally.
And again, she came to you nonverbal.
That's right.
And now she's, going to college and looks like she wants to help people do kind of basically what you did for her.